Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Subject Matter. I'm your host, Stephen Jenkins, here with your co-host, Mr. Jonathan Dayton, and our special guest, Philip Smith. We are experts in nothing, here to give you our thoughts and opinions on all of it. So, welcome. This is a kind of an interesting episode for us today. This is our first truly remote guest. Philip, why don't you go ahead, and is it okay if I call you Philip, or would you go by Mr. Smith, or?
You call me Phil, it's okay.
All right. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us about you, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, I was born in Allegheny County Hospital in 1945, which means I'm 77 years old. I have gone through a good bit in my time. I've visited 57 countries. I've worked in 13. Married 3 times, once to my high school sweetheart, and that didn't last. That only lasted 33 years. And then my second wife, it was 11 years, and she died of cancer. And now I'm with my third wife here in Kyrgyzstan. She is a doctor and surgeon, and an incredible lady, probably the most incredible lady I've ever met in my life. And if it's politically correct to give a woman a number these days, she would not be a 10, she would be an 11.
I think that's appropriate.
I was born and raised out on Winchester Road between LaVale and Cresaptown. There was an area there called Lewistown or Lewisburg because it was mostly my relatives, my grandmother and grandfather. I think there were about 11 uncles and aunts in the family. There were somewhere around 15 houses that were all my cousins. So we always had enough to play football or baseball or whatever. And I went to Cresaptown School for a while. Parkside in LaVale opened up, went there. From there, I went to Allegheny. In the 9th grade, my dad bought a business in Mount Savage. So we moved to Mount Savage. He got very ill and had a couple heart attacks and went blind from cataracts. So he gave up the business, basically lost it, and we moved back to Winchester Road. And while the cataracts were being developed, because back in those days you had to wait until it was finished and completed for the growth. And finished Allegheny in the 10th grade, and then we moved to Ridgely, finished Ridgely, or graduated from Ridgely in 63. And that's sort of the background there. I got married when I was 65, in 1965, to a lady that I had known there in Ridgely. And we worked in Washington. She worked for the FBI. I worked as an accountant. And we stayed there for a while until she got homesick. And then we moved back to Cumberland, where I worked for Sears when it was still in Winchester Road, the new store out there in the mall. I was in charge of the credit and did that for about a year and a half. Did a rather good job. They wanted me to move up in the company. And I said, when will that happen? They said, well, when we get around to it. And I said, no, thank you. And I went to work for Montgomery Ward in Wheaton, Maryland, down by D.C., and stayed there for a while. And one of the things you'll see if you looked at my resume is you'll see that I don't really spend very much time in one place. I've lived in 70 different places for more than a month.
Wow.
Vacations don't count.
Right.
And I've had 71 different businesses and jobs. And, I'm not yet finished. I'm slowing down a little bit. One of the things that I do when I make presentations to folks in different places is that I am probably the first person that you have met who has died 3 times in a week and come back. That happened to me in 1998. I was here in Kyrgyzstan, and my appendix burst on a Friday. I didn't know it. I knew nothing about it. There was no pain, nothing, until Sunday morning. When I got up, I could hardly move. And I called my office manager, who called the ambulance, took me to the doctor, came in, said, "You have to have an operation right now because your appendix has burst." And it was too late to be evacuated. So I had a local operation. The doctor here saved my life. He lost me twice on the table during the operation. So there was 2 times. And then 4 days later, I had a near-death experience where I saw an angel who invited me to come up because everything was ready. I said, "Nope, I'm not ready." And that was the beginning of a pretty serious change in my life about how I looked at things. And a light went off. Some crazy things happened. My wife in California sent me a fax saying, "You can't lay in bed on your back because you don't get paid unless you work because you're a consultant for this company." She had no idea what was going on. And that was what I got the morning after. I saw the angel who invited me to come up. And I thought, right there is when I'm going to make my change. The light, it was a big light that came on. And I changed my life from that point forward. Totally changed it. And I knew it was the end of that marriage because that's one reason I had gone to Kyrgyzstan anyway, because we weren't getting along. And it ended up in a divorce a couple years later. But and then I worked in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and Russia, Armenia and Montenegro and Serbia, some of the very nice places. The good thing is the government was paying for my accommodations, and I always had a nice place. And always had, after I got away from my wife in California, I had lots of parties. And it was a good life, making good money, much more than I could make in the United States. That's when I was in my 50s. So for the last 27 years, since 1995, I've been doing this kind of work anywhere that I can fit in. And after those 3 places, I then went to Afghanistan after the Taliban had been had been sort of sent up in the mountains. They never got rid of them. They just went up in the mountains and waited for us. I went to Afghanistan a total of 17 times since 2002. When the Iraq War broke out, I was seconded to the British Army with the rank of Brigadier General. And my job was to get the system working so that we could take the money from the Iraqi food for oil program that was being accumulated in the New York Federal Reserve, take that and get it back into the country in the salaries of 158,000 people just in the southern part of the country where I work. And within 3 weeks, we had the central bank reopened after it had been totally looted and just burned and everything. And we were, within 4 weeks, we had everybody getting their salaries and the pensions, and had all those folks getting cash back into the system so that the system wouldn't crash. And we actually did what I thought was a rather good job. Mm-hmm. That eventually deteriorated, and the British Army left southern Iraq. They were based in Basra, and I was based at the main base was the airport. I was based at one of Saddam's castles and basically was in charge of all the money because I was the only American. And the Americans would fly the money in, and I had to sign for it. And I was spending about $43 million a week. And it was interesting. When I left, we did an audit, and I was $1 off because somebody had made change. And I have no idea why, because we didn't have any dollars. We didn't have any change.
Right.
But there's been, I can tell you stories that you would never believe. I could go on for hours. I have a master class that's 2 hours long, and I have another class that is actually 13 hours long that I'm going to be presenting here at the American University, sometime in the near future. They wanted to try to do it in September, but we didn't have enough time. And then other things happened to me. Had a couple heart attacks along the way. So far, I've had 4. Had stents put in. You can see my eye doesn't quite work. That was because of a sniper attack on our convoy going back from the airport in Basra to our base. I was the only one without a weapon, and the guy next to me pushed me on the floor. My helmet hit my eye, detached the retina, and I'm in. Who's going to do an operation in the middle of Iraq with a bunch of sand? And I thought I knew I had a cataract growing, so I thought the cataract had just grown, and it eventually it took about 2 weeks. My vision was gone. When I got back to I was living in Moscow. I moved after my work in Moscow. I bought a place there and lived in the center of Moscow from 2001 until 2020. That's a whole. That's another whole couple chapters.
Sure.
But
absolutely.
I couldn't do anything about it. When I got back, I had a test because I thought there was a cataract. I said, take the lens off, put a new lens in. He did. It didn't work. And he got back in there again, and he said, well, you got a detached retina. You need to go to the hospital. And there was a very famous, world-famous doctor there who was a specialist. And they operated 5 times on my eye.
Wow.
Now, think about this. You could put a needle around there. That's all bones.
Right.
And that's how they had to do the anesthetic. And I was awake while they did it.
Wow.
The operation. And, it didn't work. And because it doesn't work, that eyelid has become lazy. And that's why sometimes if I look up, it's not bad. But if I look straight at you, it just sags.
Sure.
But that women tell me that when you get old, things sag anyway. So I'm not going to worry about it. I don't. By the way, I don't take myself too seriously. I take my work very serious, but
Sure.
I do have fun. I have an extremely positive attitude.
Absolutely.
I am an optimist from the first moment that I get up in the morning, all day long. First thing I do is I tell God I'm grateful that I can get out of bed and stand up, and thank Him for everything or her, whichever one you want. Thanks for everything that has been given to me and that I now have, and especially the lady who I'm now married to, who happened to be the nurse who assisted the doctor in 1998 when they lost me twice on the table.
Oh wow!
I got to know all the nurses, but I didn't speak any Russian at that point, and they all speak Russian or Kyrgyz, which is a totally different language. When I came back after I was in Iraq, I came back here for another project, which. By the way, if I'm talking too much and you want to ask any questions, just jump right in.
No, totally. I was going to mention just you said when you died 3 times. I just thought that was interesting. On our previous episode, talking with my aunt who's a nurse, we were asking sort of like if anybody had witnessed any like modern day miracles or things like that, I'd say that probably qualifies
as a modern day miracle.
Right.
But, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you've lived in so many different countries, so many different locations.
My question too, yeah.
Is there one place in this world that you would classify as the best, or a place that we should all be visiting at some point in our life?
I'm extremely comfortable here in Kyrgyzstan. It is an incredible country. It's 90% mountains. They have mountains here that are 21, 22, 23,000 feet.
Wow.
I'm sitting in my office basically, which is the third bedroom. If I go into my living room, I can look, and if it's clear, I can see snow-covered mountains now. And you do all winter and all summer. It doesn't snow. Last year, I think they only had like 3 or 4 inches of snow. So it's not too bad. The weather is very much like Cumberland. When I first came here, they said, well, you're not going to be able to take the winters. And I said, well, what's it like? And they told me, and I said, that's what I grew up in.
Right.
So it's no problem. But as far as the country that I have liked the most was Montenegro. It's a very small country. They have about 660,000 people. It was part of Yugoslavia until they started cutting it up into different countries. It's on the Baltic, or on the Adriatic Sea. I could be in the mountains skiing, and in 2 hours I could be at the beach swimming.
Wow.
And it was just amazing. Fresh fish every week. We would drive from the capital, Podgorica, for every Friday night we went to the same restaurant. They'd see us coming. They'd put the tables together. There were anywhere from 6 to 10 of us, and they would bring out the platter with the fresh fish that was just brought in that day. We'd make our selections. They would grill it, and then we'd go walk along the pier where they were unloading the boats, the fishing boats, and we would buy half a dozen or so that we'd take home, clean them, and the next day we'd barbecue them. It was just incredible. And there's a lot of Italian food. The local food is incredible. It was just a very, very comfortable place to be. Never had a bit of a problem. Ended up with a girlfriend there. One of the things that I learned over the last 50 or so years is that if I help other people, the more I can help other people, the more comes back to me.
Right.
And when I was there, the first day I was in Montenegro, in my office, I spoke to the receptionist and asked her if she knew somebody who would be able to give me a guide of the city, be my guide for the city. And in exchange for that, I would buy dinner. And she said, well, I can do that. And she happens to be a singer that is in her spare time. And now that's all she does is sing. And during that period in 2002, it would have been, she was looking to do her first CD. And I organized a bunch of the expats. I said, hey, guys, we need to help her get her CD done. We got enough money so she could rent the studio and get the musicians and get it all done right. And she did her first one. She's now done 12 or 13 CDs and was on, I don't know, you guys probably don't know about the program Eurovision, but it's a contest of the best musician from every country in Europe. Wow. And she competed for that and was number 2 in Montenegro, so she didn't get to go. But she's still singing. We're still good friends. Every time I go to Montenegro, I spend time with her. And she's just she's just one person I've helped. I did the same thing in Kazakhstan with a group, 2 ladies, her sisters, that their father was a composer, and they just had incredible voices. So we did what we could to organize them into a business plan, how they could grow. They ended up with, as far as I know, 6 different CDs. But then they got married and started having kids, and that slowed that
Life
down.
moves
One
on.
is living in Italy, and the other one, I think, is living in Moscow.
Sure.
But
So you
there's
have-
just a couple of the examples of people that I've tried to help.
Sure.
But Montenegro would be very easy to live in.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't discount America.
Sure, sure. So you have, I know I wanted to discuss at some point today, so I think now's the perfect time. So you have written books, is that correct? And I think you had mentioned before we started recording, actually, that one of them recently, is doing well, I'll put it that way. I'll let you elaborate on that a little bit more.
Well, I did get a message today. I don't know if you know Jack Canfield. He was the original co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He has written several hundred books. He has sold 600 million books worldwide.
Wow.
And that's not bad, and that's probably nice royalties.
Not bad.
Yeah. I attended a retreat with Jack last year. He commented on one of the books that I now have on Amazon. We made some changes, and he said it would probably be a bestseller. It isn't yet, only because not enough people know about it. But I also co-authored a book with him it's now on Amazon. And I was told this morning in an email that is now a bestseller.
Wow.
So that was good news. The name of the one that I did on my own started actually the 2 days after I saw the angel at the near-death experience, and I recapture what it is. But I only spend 1 month or the first chapter on me. I talk about other things that you can do, and the name of it is "You Are the Most Important." Everything, the road to everything you want in your life. I've been lucky. I've been blessed. I have been a millionaire 3 times so far. I got caught in some situations. One was 2 of them were real estate related, where real estate does those things.
Sure.
And the other one was a guy who just simply didn't pay back the money. He didn't pay me my share of the company. We were making $1 million a year profit. We had 40 people working that were generating thousands of dollars every month. But he decided he wanted to go in a different direction, and he basically took the money and went in a different direction.
Sure.
I got what I could, but it certainly wasn't what I should have gotten. But I don't care. As part of my book that I wrote, "You Are the Most Important," one of the things that I do is I try to get people to think outside the box. Everything you learn in school is within that box. But I could show you how. I have some examples in the books of things to do so that you get outside of the box. You're not necessarily outside your comfort zone, but it's things you think about that could be outside the box that you can actually do. I teach people how to reduce their stress. I'm sure neither one of you have any stress because you have everything under control. But what I did was I sat down and made a list of every person who has done something wrong, in my opinion, to me, or has not paid back money that I loaned to them, and there were a lot of those, or have, like the guy in the other business who took that business and went his own way. I made a list of all those, and that totaled the monetary amount listed in all those was $2,157,000. I wrote them all down, and everybody who has been unpleasant to me or put me in a bad spot was on that list. Everybody that I could call who was still alive, because some of these folks have passed on, I said, I'm not sure whether you remember me. But we had this situation, and I want to tell you right now, if I did anything to make you feel bad, I'm sorry. And the fact that you never paid me back $80,000 or $100,000 or whatever it was, I'm going to forgive you. I'm not going to think about you for another day in my life. You're forgiven. Don't worry about it. And after I went through that, I crumpled up that piece of paper, put it in a plate, lit it, and burned it. I took the ashes and put them in the toilet, flushed the toilet. Next morning, I felt great.
I can
It
imagine,
was
yeah.
totally amazing. And I've been teaching that as part of my master classes that I do. And then basically, you can do anything you want to do. Now, as a politician, Jonathan, I'm not sure how far you want to go, but you can do whatever you want to do.
Absolutely.
And if you have a vision and a plan to get there, you can get it.
Absolutely.
Basically, I mean, it's not that difficult. I teach people that you've got to change your thought process. So a lot of people have negative stuff in their head. So one of my things that I use is a lemon. Close your eyes, cut the lemon in half, and then take half and cut it in half. Take that quarter and put it in your mouth and squeeze. And what you're going to get is your saliva glands working because it's thinking how sour that lemon is. Now, that's how easy it is to talk to people and have them change their mind. Because that's all, when you close your eyes and do this, your saliva glands will work and your mouth is going to get full of saliva trying to offset the lemon juice. And that's how easy it is to change your mind. And if you put something positive in there, you have to take something negative out. So what I do and what I practice is to get rid of the negatives and be positive about everything. If you look at my Facebook or any of my social media, you'll see a lot of positive stuff in there. And I hope there is no negative anywhere because I'm very careful not to do that. I at one time, when I graduated from high school, I weighed 167 pounds. That's in 1963. I got up to 275. And I saw a picture of me one day at 275, and I thought, that's pretty disgusting. So I went on a diet. I am now at about 170, 172, compared to the bulk that I had before. And I show people what to do. And that's all part of my book. Part of my book is to do your planning. But before you do your planning, dream. Do you want to be a state representative? Be a state representative. Do you want to be governor? Be a governor. Whatever that dream is, go for it.
Sure.
Whatever you want to be, go for it. But write it down and then think about the steps you're going to take to get there.
Absolutely.
I have basically a 4-week course in the book of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it, so that I don't care what you want. You want to. Have you ever driven a Ferrari? It is a fun.
I can't say that I
haven't done that.
I had, you know what a Mercedes SL is?
Yep.
Right, the 2-seater. Well, I wanted one of those for a long time. I got one. I drove it for 4 years. I put 300,000 miles on it and sold it. And that was part of the time. That's probably what you would call midlife crisis. But I enjoyed it. But it was one of the things that I wanted, and I did it. I've driven BMWs. I've driven Mercedes. I've driven Maseratis. Just about any car you can think of. I even went to in California, they have a race a racetrack where you can learn how to be a race car driver. I forget the name of it now. I even went there, and I drove at 180 miles an hour. That is fun. It is an excellent thing to do. One of the times with my SL going across Montana, I was doing 140. And then I pulled off because I wanted to put the top down on the car. And a policeman pulled up behind me and he said, "You having problems?" I said, "No." He said, "I noticed you weren't slowing down too much." And I said, "Well, my understanding is there's no speed limit." He said, "That's right, as long as you're okay." And this was a beautiful, sunny day.
No speed limit.
And he said, "I clocked you at 140. And I said, "Well, what the speedometer said." And he said, "Well, how high does your speedometer go?" I said, "I don't know." And I looked at it, it was like 200. And I said, I'm not going to try for 200. He said, "I hope you don't." But I like driving fast.
So you made it happen.
I've driven
Is
stock cars.
what you're saying. You're like you
Go
wanted
ahead,
to
I'm
drive
sorry.
fast, so you made it happen, right?
Yeah. So Phil, I have
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, because we're we've gone to about the length of time that we normally go to, I have one kind of final question for you. You've met a lot of people in your life. You've done a lot in your life, significantly more than what we have. We have a long life ahead of us, right?
Right. We got some time.
But
You guys are still young.
But is there any famous people notable people that you've met along the way that that the listeners would know? And Jack, of course, is one.
Chicken Soup for the
Is
Soul
is a pretty good one. Is there anybody else that you've met?
You know who Lady Bird and Lyndon Johnson is,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. I was editor of the Strayer newspaper. Lady Bird invited all the editors of all the universities around Washington to come in to have a discussion. And I was working I went to school part-time and worked full-time. I was working for Les Carpenter, whose wife, Liz Carpenter, was Lady Bird's press secretary. And I go into the meeting at the White House, and in walks Lyndon. And he says, "Boy, you got to be one of the luckiest boys in D.C. today. You're the only guy here, and you got 30 women in here. Is that fair?" and I explained to him what we're doing. And he said, "Why don't you, it's 12 o'clock. Why don't you come over to my office a minute?" We did. He said, it is 12 o'clock, so it's 5 o'clock somewhere else. So what do you drink? And I told him Jack Daniels. And he said, "That's excellent. With a little bit of water?" And I said, "Yes, sir." So he poured us a Jack, and we sat there for 10 minutes and had a drink. And
Wow.
And then somebody came in and said, "Sir, you have a meeting." And I went back into the other room, and Liz Carpenter had walked in. She knew me because I worked for her husband in a press office. She said, "Phil, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm here for this meeting, but he invited me to go in there, and I just came back." And so there's one. I've met dozens of ambassadors. In every country I go to, I get to know who the American ambassador is.
For sure, yeah.
I met Jimmy Carter. I met Billy Carter in Plains, Georgia, and I bought a 6-pack of Billy beer that I had for a long time, and I'm not sure whatever happened to it. When I lived in California, when I was doing banking, our office was in Encino, which is very close to all of the studios. And I'm sure you know who Wolfgang Puck is.
Yeah.
He was one of the customers. He wanted to build a house, and I was the guy in charge of construction loans.
Wow.
So I met him. We went through it. We got it done. Everything was perfect. He paid the loan off. And anytime I wanted to go to Spago in Hollywood, he said, "You call. You got a space, because there's a list of people that if they call, they get a table no matter what."
Right.
And I had some friends from Cumberland who, well, you remember Goldsmith Black and Aaron's Jewelry out in LaVale.
I remember Aaron. I remember
Where the
Aaron.
A&P used to be. The guy who owned that was a very close friend of mine, and they came out on some business thing, And I asked his wife, that couple was probably our best friends in Cumberland. I said, where do you want to go to eat? She said, you think we can go to Spago? And I said, yeah. And she said, I said, when you want to go? She said, tomorrow. I picked up the phone, made the reservation. The next night we walked in and got a really nice table next to Gene Kelly, and some a younger lady. I don't know who it was. I have no idea. And out comes Wolfgang, and I called him Wolf. And he walked over and said, Phil, how are you? And these people about fell off their chair. That was sort of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I said, Wolf, these ladies, my wife and this lady would like to have one of your books, if you don't mind. So he brought them out, and he said, now, what's your name? He wrote her name and then wrote something nice in the book. My wife got one. The other lady got one. And she had no idea that I even knew him. Remember All in the Family? That program. You guys are not even old enough to remember these.
I know of the show. I haven't particularly watched it much, but I do know of the show.
Carol O'Connor actually had a lovely little restaurant in Beverly Hills. And when I was taking some extension classes from University of San Francisco, that's where they held them, was in Beverly Hills. So I would stop there and have dinner. And I met him half dozen times. The guy who was the captain on Gilligan's Island, I forget his name.
Right.
He also had a really nice restaurant right on the border of Beverly Hills and Los Angeles. Went there a couple of times because my brother-in-law knew him very well. You know the song "Proud Mary," probably, maybe.
If I heard it, I'm sure.
I'm sure we heard it.
I've heard it. Yeah.
Okay. The guy who originally recorded that was a black gentleman by the name of Solomon Burke. He was also an actor. He was also a preacher, but he's the one who made "Proud Mary" popular. He was one of the people on the list, by the way, who borrowed money and never paid it back. But he died. He was awarded an Emmy and a Lifetime Achievement Award and things like that. But governor of Maine, when I was working in Maine, you probably remember Ed Muskie, who was a senator. You guys too young.
I might not.
He was a senator in the 60s and 70s for Maine. I have been part owner of some restaurants where when Ed was coming back from Washington, he would call and make a reservation, and so we knew what table we wanted, so we'd reserve it. The problem was he had a bit of a habit of perhaps drinking a bit too much occasionally, and he lived in Waterville, which was about 75 miles from Portland, which is where our restaurant was, and there were many nights that we had to drive him home. One day I was in Washington flying back, and I got one of the front seats, and he gets on the plane, and he reaches over and shakes my hand, and really nice and everything, and then goes back and sits down. And it was fun because other people around me were probably wondering who the hell I was. Mm-hmm. I had who's this guy that Ed is shaking? Ed Muskie's shaking his hand, and I asked a waitress to ask him if he could come up and sit beside me. And I said, if there's an extra charge for it, I'll pay for it. So she did, and he did, and we had a nice chat. I
mean that's a significantly larger list than
than both Stephen and I, and we I guess really appreciate you being on because you bring a wealth of knowledge to the show that we're not used to.
Right. Well, I mean we've interviewed people we know, and that's certainly a massive change
and experiences too that we're not used to either. And I know there's a lot left that we could be learning about, and we would be happy to link your stuff in our bio.
I was gonna say, if you want to, we'll link all your stuff, but if you just want to tell the listeners the best place that they can find you and see all your stuff and everything you've done.
I just thought of a couple more people.
Okay.
President of Afghanistan.
Okay.
Both of them, Karzai and the other one, the one who came after him. President of Montenegro. President of Serbia. I was allowed in a meeting with Mr. Putin at one point.
Wow.
I never got to the point of shaking his hand, but he's just a little fella anyway. Anyway, if you look at my name, Philip Walter Smith, www.philipwaltersmith.com is my website. I have a lot of stuff on there. I've got newsletters. I've got publications. I've written for the World Bank 4 different occasions for specific projects. I'm debating whether I should put that on social media or not. Under Facebook, it's Philip Walter Smith. Under Facebook group, Philip Walter Smith, in all caps. YouTube, under Philip W. Smith, or Philip Walter Smith. What else is there? LinkedIn, all of it. But it's all Philip Walter Smith. And I was lucky to be able to catch those names when we decided to do this, so
Sure.
that they're all the same.
Absolutely.
I've got a bunch of videos on YouTube. Unfortunately, they're on 2 different places. And if you go to my, if I look at it, let's see, that's pretty much it.
Sure. Well, and we'll certainly any other links that we'll post them, down in the description and everything, and we'll make sure that our listeners have a way to reach out and learn more about you and all that sort of stuff. And I just want to, again, thanks for coming on the podcast. You're the first person that we've had on here by request. So that's pretty cool for us, kind of moving things forward. As far as the listeners go, thank you for listening. We'll see you guys next week. As always, we don't have an outro. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you once again to Philip Walter Smith for being on here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.